Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our monthly talk. And this afternoon, our speaker is Gareth Scourfield, who's one of our members, and that's always a joy. And if any of you would like to volunteer to be a speaker, I'm starting to think about speakers for 2027, so it's never too early to strike. Anyway, Graham, you're very, very welcome.
Right.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. One small fact before we start, I'm Gareth, not Graham, but don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I was told once, call me what you like, but don't call me early for work. So that's the top of that. Now, before I start, my talk today is about this chap in the photo here, Percy Dowten. But before I actually start, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. I don't do interactive talks, but before we start, how many people here had relatives who fought in the First World War? Pamela, you can put one hand.
Yes, I did.
How many people, thank you, how many people here had relatives who were killed in the First War? 1, 2, 3. That, and myself in that as well. Proportion-wise, that's about right. That's in a sort of a crowd like this. That's about it. So, Percy, I've already sort of introduced there. My great-uncle, and he didn't survive. Right. My interest in the First War goes back over 40 years now. I don't know what it was. It was a simple little book I picked up somewhere, and it was like as if there were a big hand that grabbed me by my chest, dragged me in, and I was involved in the First World War, or the story and the history of the First World War. From there on in, I've been very lucky in that I've been back and forth to France and Belgium many, many times. The best I ever done was 3 trips in 1 year. My wife was very, very considerate on that occasion. I am going out again. My wife and I, current wife that is, my wife and I are going out again in June, and we go into Belgium. I was once told a small description of Belgium as a country that does French-style cuisine, but with German portions. Oh, much super place. Anyway, so what started me into this story on Percy? There's a little book here. British, not Royal, British Legion Pilgrimage, 1928. And I can remember this in my mother's house. I can remember it when I was young. This little book there. Didn't know a great deal about it. Yes, I looked at it, and there was lots of details in it, and I just let it lie there. And I suppose it must have been the time that I started taking an interest in the First War. I asked my mother about this, about the little book, and she said, oh, yes. Her grandparents, my great-grandparents, went on that in 1928. I said, well, what's the story behind that? They went to visit their son, who was killed in September 1928. And she said, in passing, of course, I got all his letters, she said. Letters? Now, what did she have here? And it turns out, and I have the actual letters are here, but I have transcribed them because they were written, they're not written in untidy paper. But he gives a potted history of his time in France and Belgium. He was only out there about 6 weeks, that's all he was. But in that time, and whilst in training, he sent letters home. Some of them, I suppose the word is pathetic. They really are. And one thing, even though I'm going to read through them a little bit later, a bit of a background first, I make no apologies for the grammar used, none at all. I don't know what pressures he was under, what strain he was under, and I don't know his level of education as well. But I suppose what we do, we stick a line through that and just say, I know that he was under pressure, and some of his letters will give an indication of that. So who was Percy? Well, He was the son of Charles and Eliza Dowten. Dowten, London name. His father, Charles Dowten, from Bow, I think he was originally. He left London and travelled down to Carmarthen. And whilst there, was working on some data I have in the house. He was shown as a gardener boy. So I don't know how old he was when he came down there. I also know, through family words, Eliza Jane, well, it wasn't Dowten, and Eliza Jane, they got married eventually, met her in this large house in Carmarthen, or Carmarthenshire. At some point, he needed to make more money. As lots of people travel around Great Britain and into Wales all those years ago, he moved to the Rhondda. They got married in a little church called St. Albans. St. Albans is now a property, a house. I've been to the place there. And it's overshadowed by a huge tip. And I did think at the time, I wonder what it was like back then, First World War. What would it have been like in that area? There would have been, I know there were railway lines coming in just up, there would have been a colliery just up the road. And during the time that they were living in Treherbert and later Treorchy, had 4 children. Percy, eldest, born 1899. Brother Ernie, born 1901. Jessie, my grandmother, born 1903. And the final daughter, Ethel, born in 1910. They married, as I say, in Treherbert. And all the children were born in Treherbert. But if you look at the 1901 census, it gives the address, gives the family, house in garden of 68 Gwendolen Street. Now, I've been to Gwendolen Street. Number 68 is knocked down. There's nothing there. But you've got a row of terraced houses just running along from it there. And I've often wondered what was the size of a house in a garden in Gwendolen Street? Was it a house? Was it a converted shed? Was it a knocked up, prefabricated something? I haven't a clue. I've got no idea. I can't find any details on that. That was in the 1901 census. In the 1911 census, the address is given as 13 Dyfodwg Street, Treorchy. If any of you know Treorchy, if you know where the Park and Dare Hall is, Dyfodwg Street is just along there. And I've been to that property as well, never been in. After the 1911 census and prior to World War I, the family moved down from the Rhondda. They lived in Aberavon. I don't know if you know, anybody knows some of the streets there in Aberavon. The first house they lived in was Beach Street, a street I know very well. Then they moved to 26 Thomas Street, and that was during First World War. 26 Thomas Street is where my own mother was born, in that house. And the house is still there. And then they moved on to 23 Victoria Road, again in Aberavon. If any of you can think back to the long road from the beach with Antlin's on the corner, the Vivian, the pub, that is Victoria Road there. So that's a little bit of a background to Charles and Eliza, the family, and certainly Percy. I know that Percy had a job in the docks in Talbot, the old docks, and he was working in the dry dock area. As to what he did, I've no idea. Now, for whatever reason, First World War came along. Percy would have been in the First World War. He would have only been 15, way too young. But Percy decided to join the army. And Percy did something slightly different. He didn't wait to be conscripted, and this would have been in 1918. He didn't wait till he'd been conscripted. He actually enrolled. And the story was, and I don't know if this is true, that he wanted to be in somewhere that he fancied, as opposed to just being put anywhere. It didn't work. I can tell you that now, it didn't work, because he went miles away. he joined up in 1918, and it would have been round about the April, May, that he actually joined. I have a letter from him here dated September the 4th, 1918, and he gives his address as Cyclist, P. Dowten, 5th East Yorkshire Cycle Company, attached to the 4th Company Durham Light Infantry, and he's based in Newcastle. Now then, I said he travelled a long way away. He joined up, perhaps in Aberafan. My own grandfather went to Cardiff to join for no other reason. My grandfather was one of a large family, and he joined underage, but he joined up in Cardiff to avoid any nonsense. Percy, he enrolled, and he was shifted into East Yorkshire. Now, it was from South Wales up to East Yorkshire, a heck of a run, whichever way you think about it. And a small anecdote here, I knew, because of my time with the First War, I've known quite a few First World War soldiers. One of them told me that he was living in Nottingham, but he'd never been on a train in his life. So he enrolled, and he actually joined the Tyneside. He went up to Newcastle, but it was only because he wanted a train ride, and he had his ticket paid as well. Those were the days then, wasn't it? So Percy went to the East Yorkshire Regiment, and as I say, it was the 5th Battalion, East Yorkshire. As I say, I do have a lot of letters here. I'm not going to go through, I will go through some in detail, but there are some that I'll just skim over because they don't really say a great deal. But the first one is dated, we were issued with paper which was entitled Newcastle and District Patriots League of Honour. I suspect they were writing paper given out, maybe in the barracks, maybe in public libraries, I don't know where, but they had that given. And that's what I have that there. And the district centre for then was Central Hall, Westgate Road, Newcastle upon Tyne. And the first letter just reads, Cyclist P. Dowten, 5th East Yorks. Dearest mother and father, and I repeat myself, I make no apologies for the grammar. Dearest mother and father, in answer to your loving letter and 10 shillings, which I received last Sunday, thanks very much. I hope that will be the last. I hope you are not offended with me for asking for it. Well, I must tell you that I will be here for 9 or 10 weeks for certain. And as for leave, they don't give leave to men that isn't from overseas because I have inquired. I'm not disappointed. Cheer up and don't worry about me because I am. And that is where the letter ends. Obviously, another page of the letter was lost. His next letter, but he's still in Newcastle. No date on this one. Dearest mother and father and all, just a few lines to let you know that I arrived quite safe at New Biggin. And I think that's Newcastle Way. I arrived here about 8:30. Well, I've just come. I changed at Cardiff, at Crewe, Newcastle, Morpeth and Bedlington. I had to wait at Crewe from 8:30 p.m. until 12:30 a.m. And I had toothache mad. I went out to the station into the town and found a dentist. He pulled it out for nothing. He said, have a cigarette instead. And I'm not making that up. That's exactly what he says here. I eat all those small cakes with jam in at Cardiff, and I eat nothing else till now. And the first one I seen when I arrived was that girl that's on the photo. Tell Jessie, my grandmother, tell Jessie I saw Edith Lodi's boy going to Ireland, and he has only just joined up. Poor kid. Well, the sergeant major just seen me, and he said, you were late. I said, I know. So I told him I left yesterday morning instead of the afternoon. So he said, you were a good lad. We will let you off. I know it's a long way. That's the stuff to give the troops. Next time I come home, I will stop a week. Oh, I meant to fetch those matches back with me, but I forgot. Never mind, don't send them. And he goes on a little bit about, he talks to people, and he refers to Hilda. Hilda was his girlfriend. It's raining here now. Well, dear mother, give my best respects to Mrs. Perry, Carrie, and all I know. I must close now as I have to get some work done. He refers to Ernie now, and he says, his brother, I hope Ernie will alter, but the next time I come home, I think there was a bit of a sibling rivalry between them. I read it in other letters as well. Next letter. No date. He's still in 5th Battalion, East Yorkshire Cycle Company. He must have been assigned to that at the time. As his point, mind, is that by the time that he had joined, the recruiting campaign that took place prior to 1916 had been abandoned. 1916, Kitchener's famous photo, he's pointing his finger, Britain needs you, or your country needs you, whatever it was. That had been stopped because the new army, as he was called, all recruits rushed to join up, stuck together in PALS battalions. And the PALS battalions went into action on the Somme and were decimated. And the outcome of that is that villages and towns and perhaps areas within a village or a town would have 3 or 4 or 5 people from the same street missing. That was abandoned. But as it happened, Percy, when he was assigned to a regiment, he was actually assigned to a PALS battalion, but it's a leftover one. Percy was in the 10th, but eventually, not now, but he was eventually assigned to the 10th Battalion, East Yorkshire. Their nickname, Hull Commercials, Hull. 11th Battalion, Hull Tradesmen. 12th Battalion, Hull Sportsmen. So you could see the recruiting areas back from 1916. And there was a final one. The 13th Battalion of the East Yorkshire Regiment's nickname was just known as T'others. T''OTHERS. The others. They were probably leftovers. But there we are. So Percy, no date. We know it's round about April, May 1918. Dowten, dear mother, father and all, just a few lines to let you know I've arrived quite safe at the above. I left Newcastle at 2 o'clock and arrived here at 4 o'clock. There was a lot of changing. I didn't see Willie Atkins before I went. I did not have time. Well, as soon as I came here, I saw the regimental sergeant major and I explained all about my leave to him, and he said to put an application in and he would see what he could do for me. So I put one in this morning. If it comes through, I should be home Friday morning. So I expect you should get this letter Wednesday. So don't answer it until Saturday or Sunday. Very definite description, ideas there. I have not got much money. Not enough to spend at home anyway, because I shall go daft when I get there, coming back home. I'm just looking out through the windows, watching the kids play on the sands and the people going for a swim. Don't you think it would make you feel homesick? And he forms a picture. And he forms a picture as somebody who was prepared to fight for or enroll with his country. And eventually, I think he realized that he made a mistake. I really do. Plus, he shouldn't have. Well, I find it miserable here now. All my pals gone to France. There's only a few NCOs left and me. And then there's a part of the letter missing. Well, goodbye, all news when I come. I remain your son, Percy. Load of kisses. And he puts Ethel underneath, his youngest sister. Next letter. Monday, the 17th of June, 1918. In answer to your letter and parcel, which I received quite safe this afternoon, I'm very grateful for them. I shall look after them, and they fit a treat, like a glove. I told the sergeant about the other boots, but you might as well talk to the wall. And the cigarettes are a godsend. I don't know when I had a player last. I had enough to last me for a week or two now. I hope I won't have to bother you for anything else. There's a couple of bits out there. Then it says that, will it mean to say that you don't know Willie Atkins? I think this is marvellous. He used to work in Worley's, the pawnbroker. Oh, I can remember Worley's in Port Talbot. He used to go about with Michael Hive, George, Albert Harwood, and he lives in Leslie Street. He's been in our house. He also go about with Sid Thomas, one leg from the forward movement. Marvellous. It's a colloquialism. He's writing as we say it, literally. Well, Mother dear, I have not much more news now. Oh, by the way, he is going home in a week's time and he's calling at the house, I haven't a clue this is. I'll remind him about the pair of breeches he promised to lend me for when I'm home on leave. That's the stuff to give him. What whore. Dear Dad, I see on the placards up here that Will Brooks from Aberavon is fighting up here this week with Sergeant Fullerton. I'm trying to see that fight if I can. Well, I must draw to a close, hoping this will find you all in the best of health as it leaves me at the present. Have you told Auntie Bella, lived in my stag, have you told Auntie Bella that she had a friend in the army, wanting to know how she is? How's Mrs. Perry? Tell her that 1 shilling, give me luck. Well, goodbye. I remain your loving son, Percy. And then he's got on the side, Ethel and Jessie, a load of kisses. 28th of June, still in this country. Also, Di Roberts has been home, has he? It is too much money for a weekend pass. £2. I know I would not bother about it. I have been very lonely this week. I have been to the pictures 4 times this week. You say you would not be able to understand the people in Hull as if you were up here. They are worse. You would not understand them on a week of Sundays. No, as I say, grammatically it's shocking, but I know what he's getting at there. If I remember about a ball, I will fetch one. I am going to a military funeral in Gateshead. That's where Will lives, and it is raining. He should have known better than to die on a rainy day. I'm getting sick of this place already. There's not much here, just parks, etc. But a chap like me going in the park all alone. I have a good pals, but they go out courting, but none of that, Percy. I have one and that's enough. She is good to me, so I will play the game. If all the girls were like Hilda, they would do. Well, Mother dear, I have not much more news and I have to clean up for the funeral now. Refers to his brother. How is Ernie? Do he talk much about the army? Every time he does, clout him in the ear. Does he work regular? I expect Pa is still doing his bit with the rabbits. Well, I must draw close, hoping that this will find you in the best of health as it leaves me. I remain your loving son, Percy. Kiss, 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 kiss. Ethel and Jessie. This one, no date. I'm not going to read through all this, but it says, well, I must get dressed for another funeral. That's the 5th in a week and another tomorrow. They will make a soldier of me yet. Loving son Percy, Ethel, kisses. And the funeral there, that was the time the Spanish flu pandemic was now rampaging through Great Britain. And he refers to it as a complete aside and nothing to do with this. My own grandfather died of the Spanish flu, but he died on November the 10th, 1918, just before, a day before the war, the armistice was signed. Friday, the 4th of July, still in Newcastle. What do you think of this influenza? It's awful up here. They are dying every day here with it. I hope to God it's not like that down there. I think I'm going to a military funeral of one this afternoon. And it seems to me he's kicking his heels. I don't know why, but he's not. What should be happening isn't happening. You'd have to look at full records for that. I'm going to write to my boss, Mr. Roberts, one day next week and tell Charlie Briers to write to me. I want to tell him something. I want to see if he can get me out of it. To work in a shipyard or something. They say he did work in the docks, the old docks in Aberavon. I think he can. That is what I want Charlie for see. Well, dear mother, I must now draw to a close, hoping this will find you in the best of health as it leaves me a present. I remain your loving son, Percy. Kisses, Ethel, kisses, and then a PS. Who's that girl from Barry in our house? And I got the feeling reading these, his thoughts coming to him. He puts them down. He's thinking, I'll write that. Then he goes to something else. And in fact, he can come back to it again. Very much so. Now this one, I don't know what the problem was, but it's the 9th of July. Dear Mother and Father all, well, Mother dear, I'm out of hospital now, and I'm all right. Getting pay as well. If I were you, I would not bother about getting any money because it's more trouble than it's worth. You won't miss much, so don't tell that secretary anything. Leave it pass, and if anything is too late, so don't let it worry you. If you tell the sec, I wonder if it was some type of friendly society. I know that his father, Charlie Dowten, in one of the photos there, was heavily involved with RAOB. So, goes on to say, same letter, I am watching points. Dad taught me a lot. He said nothing but watch points, and that's what I'm doing. I pick a time to suit myself for leave, or if I don't, I shall fall in the trap. Now, do you understand? I think fall in the trap means being shipped abroad. Same letter. So Hilda was selling fags, was she? And only bought a threepenny one. What's up with him? He has gone good all at once. I have been told he's a nut. What would I give to be in my civvies? What, anything? Well, Mother dear, I must now draw to a close this time as I was on parade. So goodbye, hoping none of you get the flu. And what date was that? That was July. I remain your loving son, Percy. Kisses again. This letter, 15th of August. So we're up to we know we was there in March, April. He's been there in Newcastle in that area all the time. By this time, I know that he's in the 10th Battalion, Hull Commercials, East Yorkshire Regiment. Thursday, 15th of August. Dearest mother, father and all, just a few lines to let you know they did not pay me last week, and there is only one or two, and it's just one or two. And I put for myself for a pence or shillings, I've got no idea, 1 or 2 pence there. I have to pay for a damaged rifle, not pay for a new rifle, but pay for the repairs. I'm going away on Wednesday, which turns out was the 21st of August. I look back on the calendar. I am going away on Wednesday, the 21st of August at 10:30. So if you can spare a few bob, will you send it? Because I am bound to have money because they don't pay much where I am going. There's a lot of money for me when it comes through. And a week goes on about a watch. I wondered what the hell this was about. And about that watch, can you arrange for the watch to be sent on by Tuesday, 20th? We went for a route march today, about 15 miles, and it was both a hot day, so you can guess I feel a bit tired. I'm now going to bed, so will you close, hoping this will find you in the best of health. I remain your loving son, Percy. P.S. I hope you won't be offended about the watch. And the same as all the others, kiss, 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 Ethel. Now, if you start reading the regimental diary, I've put snippets in. That letter was the 15th of August. Regimental diary, I've got real letter dated 15th of August. Percy is still in the UK. Regimental history state. The average age of the battalion was now around 20 years of age. He was 19. With replacements being mostly inexperienced 19-year-olds. At the other end of the scale, there were over 40-year-olds and those whose medical category meant that they were only fit to be garrison troops. Although sent initially to be garrison troops, but as the demand for manpower increased, they suddenly found themselves upgraded to frontline troops. That is the 15th of August. And the reason for that needed extra troops. In March 1918, Germany launched a huge offensive. It was known as Operation Michael. And they retook huge areas. They retook the old Somme battlefield. They took areas around Bapaume, certainly across towards Bethune and places like this. And all of a sudden, troops were required on the Western Front. As he said, But as the demand for manpower increased, they suddenly found themselves upgraded to frontline troops. Percy sent, this is a field service card. I don't know if anybody's seen one. There was a series, I know, you can't read it here, but take my word. There's a series of sentences, and you just crossed out what wasn't applicable. In this particular one, I am quite well. I am being sent down to the base. Letter follows a first opportunity. That one is dated the 22nd of August. Regimental history states, on the nights of the 20th of August, the 10th Battalion, Percy's, were relieved by the 10th Battalion, King's Own Scottish Borderers. It has been an expensive month in terms of men. Second Lieutenant Buttery killed in action on the 20th. 30 other ranks died during the month. Second Lieutenant Taylor and Second Lieutenant Humphreys were wounded. And Second Lieutenant Hatfield was gassed. And Second Lieutenant Marshall was missing. Not that many more letters to go, but I have one which is only a partial letter. Whatever, the full amount never ever survived. And I'll start as where the letter starts. In the envelope, the reason I do that is because I only got one envelope. We are only issued with one, and you stand a good chance of the censor not reading it, saving the green envelope. I think it was done on honour, I think it was, that you were issued with envelopes that you wouldn't disclose anything, and you could send that, censors wouldn't do it. My address is Private Dowten, 419, 10th Battalion, East Yorkshire Regiment, BEF, France. He'd been training. When he joined the 5th Battalion. He's now been allocated to the 10th Battalion. And as is the records show, they had a bit of a pounding. He goes on to say, the reason I put it, whatever it is, the reason I put it in the middle of the letter is because they will tear the letter up if it isn't in the middle of the letter. Well, I must close, trusting you are in the best of health. I remain your loving son, Percy. For God's sake, keep Ernie out. So I've read there was a little bit of animosity between him and his brother, but he says it there, for God's sake, keep Ernie out. Kisses for Ethel and Jessie. Best respects to all. Cheer up. I have to, and I am lousy. Something that the troops, any troops are in the line. Lice was a huge problem. Cheer up, I am lousy. Ha ha. And written on the reverse side of that letter was a note, is a little note. It says, the two photos, he must have enclosed photos. The two photos are the volunteers who were stationed at New Biggin. They are only 16 years of age. Please answer by return of post. This letter, Thursday, the 5th of September. Dearest mother, father and all, just a few lines to let you know that I'm safe and sound once more, thank God. I haven't had a letter from you yet. I have been over the top a few times. I feel mad that I haven't had news from you. I just come out of the line last night after being cut up. There is only 10 left out of one platoon, but I wasn't in that platoon. They say go on your hands and knees and pray. I have done more than 5 times. Never mind, I say, they won't hit me. No, they have. Now, it's quite a prophetic line. I have put one out of step for you and a sniper for the rest of the family. I assume that he's been in action and he's taken out two of the enemy. I'll read that bit again. I have put one out of step for you and a sniper for the rest of the family. I'm going up again in a few hours' time to put some more out. Great confidence. I'm sorry I can't send you that 10 shillings yet, but I will. All the money I get, I spend it on food, tins of milk, sardines. That's all we get. Anything to keep us alive. So guess I need it as much as what you do. I am sending Hilda's letter. There is a chap next to me with his shirt and trousers off looking for them. You haven't to look long. We are thinking of taming them and sending them in the trenches. They are big enough. Lice. A huge problem. And not that he says it here, but they had delousing stations where you could put your uniform in. This is obviously behind the lines. Put your uniforms in, and they would be steamed. And allegedly, that would kill the lice. But if you read enough reports, as soon as the troops were handed back uniforms, put them back on, their body heat would reactivate the lice which hadn't been killed. Yeah. That's from Percy. And as I say, that was dated the 5th of September. From the regimental history, and this relates to the period 20th of August to the 5th of September. This is what the history says. Over the next 2 weeks, the battalion were kept busy with athletics, the divisional horse show in which the battalion came second, salvage work in the old front line, musketry, specialist training and practicing attacks on a two-company front. From training on that 3rd of September, orders were received to relieve the 1st Battalion, King's Own Scottish Borderers, near Pontyshell. And the companies were quickly brought back from their respective training and organised for the most. What should have been a quiet relief proved to be a lethal one for one platoon. And he made reference to this. A platoon under Lieutenant Earl was led by a King's Own Scottish Borderer guide through the village of Nieppe. This village had been heavily shelled during the day and should have been skirted. A direct hit was registered on the above platoon, with the result that the commander and 10 other ranks were killed and 6 other ranks wounded. The relief was thereby delayed until 4 a.m. That night was recalled by a Private Pearson. One night, moving up to take over a portion of a line, our guide took us the wrong way, along a road subject to a sudden and fierce enemy shell fire. We had just reached Pont-Neuf, where we were halted while the guide tried to sort out his whereabouts when a 5.9-inch shell landed right in the middle of the platoon of our chaps, killing many instantly. Among them, a lad I had known the greater part of my life. His tragic death shook me for some time. That was a Private Pearson. In total, 13 other ranks died that day. Still regimental history. There was to be no let-up with forward movement. The next day, the battalion was supposed to advance on a 2,000-yard front, penetrate 1,500 yards on the right and 2,000 yards on the left. Fair old distance. The Germans were certain to be jumpy because at 8 a.m., the 29th Div were to attack and take Hill 63 under the cover of an artillery barrage. Hill 63, I know quite well, it's on the road between Ypres and, or Wipers as people call it, and Amontia. It's near the village and Plug Street. When the Hill 63 attack started, for some reason, the enemy artillery shelled the assembly positions in which the Hull Commercials, the 10th Battalion, were waiting. It was not an auspicious start, and to add to their problems, the attack was over flat ground devoid of cover. I know the area, I've walked some of that ground. There was to be no artillery barrage, and the enemy were alert. Moving over open ground, the men were exposed to machine gun fire, which caused a number of casualties. German resistance was strong. C Company advanced 1,000 yards. D Company only managed 500 yards, whilst B Company was forced to retire to its original positions. Later in the day, orders were received that the battalion had to push ahead. Carry on, boys. If this was possible without sustaining heavy casualties. The renewed attack met strong opposition and was not continued. For very little gain, the battalion suffered heavily again. Lieutenant Earl and Second Lieutenant Cheesebrother were killed. Captain Wallace, Lieutenant Oakdean and Second Lieutenant Rayner were wounded, and 69 other ranks were casualties, of which 10 were killed that day. At one peaceful penetration, Peaceful penetration. 2 men of D Company were left behind in enemy artillery, believed killed, although some of the returning troops thought they had seen them alive but wounded and hiding in the corn. Private Pearson, a stretcher bearer, was asked to go and find them, taking another soldier with him as his guide. They both changed into camouflage suits and crawled out into the cornfield. After safely crossing the cornfield, they stumbled upon a concealed enemy post which contained personal equipment and rifles. But fortunately for them, there was no sign of the enemy. Retiring to the edge of the field, they waited. None of the enemy returned to the post, so they continued their search, but finding nothing, they returned to their own lines. At 3 a.m. on the 5th of September, the battalion moved back into support, although on the march back, a fatal accident occurred. A man picked up a dead shell and threw it away, causing it to explode. A Private Joseph Britton was killed and 6 others wounded. The man who threw the shell was only slightly wounded. And it's something that even today, go on the Western Front, certain parts of the Western Front, you will still find munitions. There are parts, I was on the Somme last year, and there's always one point I know where I can go and I can find munitions. Surrounding fields, it's on a calvary, a cross, and it's in the middle of a field. So people ploughing up, etc., farmers will take shells and put them there to be collected as and when. But they are around. Percy sent another field service card, 9th of September. I'm quite well. I've received your letter. The 3rd letter follows. That is the 9th of September. Again, from the regimental history, between the 6th and I believe it's the 10th of September. This is what it says. So this is from the histories. Percy is there. 6th of September, Lieutenant Colonel Rigg was summoned to brigade headquarters to be told that the battalion was to launch another attack. They'd had a pounding. This time with an artillery barrage, with the final objective being the River Lees. After the conference, River Lees is a tiny brook. It's tiny, but there we are. After the conference, Lieutenant Colonel Rigg returned to Steenwerk, where the battalion was waiting. He collected his company commanders and took them back to brigade headquarters to have the Operation Artillery Barrage explained to them. The immediacy of the attack precluded the usual reconnoitering of the assembly position, so they didn't even have time to work out where they were going from. And so it says, the reconnoitring would have to be done by the intelligence officer of the 11th Battalion, the battalion which was responsible for the section of the line through which the 10th were to attack. The second lieutenant, the intelligence officer, carefully chose the assembly positions, and the commercials, Percy's group, were able to wait unseen on the morning of the attack. This was fortunate for the attacking troops because the German troops were evidently nervous and these guns fired a certain amount of counter preparations. The line of the barrage was noticed to be 500 yards in front of our assembly positions. Germans were nervous at that point. 7th September. 0 hour was set for 10 a.m. and by 11 a.m. the attacking troops had advanced about 1,200 yards to the light railway near Harrisburg Junction, but they were still approximately 1,200 yards short of their objective, the River Lea. Sawyer Farm is still there. Sawyer Farm, which was surrounded by a moat as well as being heavily wired, put up a determined resistance. The Germans shelled the whole area all afternoon, and even when the battalion was relieved by the 11th East Lancs, the position was still very uncertain. I won't read through, but the casualties on the 7th were very heavy. Lieutenant Krogh and Second Lieutenant Bradbury were killed, and Second Lieutenant Gordon and Mayhill were wounded. 30 other ranks were killed. 30 other ranks were killed, with a number dying of wounds over the next few days. 8th of September, the next day, the attack was continued by the 11th Battalion, East Yorks. After initially making good progress, their left flank was turned and the attack broke down. They also suffered heavy casualties. The 10th Battalion relieved the 11th Percy's group. The history states that the weather was wet and the going was difficult. 9th of September, a morning patrol found Ponkatu farm empty. Accordingly, the battalion adjusted its line, moving forward, only meeting with slight opposition. Sawyer Farm had not been taken. 10th of September, Lieutenant Hutchinson, the brigade intelligence officer, who was out on reconnoitring position, was shot and killed by a sniper. No further offensive action was taken by the battalion, and that night they were relieved by the 11th. I come to Percy's last letter. That period covered then was up until the 6th to the 10th. This is the 15th of September. Dearest mother and father and all, in answer to the loving and most welcome letter, which I received yesterday morning, I received two, the one dated the 3rd and the one dated the 9th, so I think I've received them all. Now he refers back to the watch. I haven't a clue the story about the watch, but he says, and about the watch, when you send it, please register it. It was only a few coppers more. Will you please send it as soon as you get it, as I am out on divisional rest now. That is 12 days or more. It is a change from the trenches. And I'll read it as he wrote it, yeah. Oh, so Di Roberts has been home, has he? What regiment is he in? Oh, so Mrs. Roberts' boy, Mrs. Ross's boy has been at home leave, have they? I can't remember them. But fancy Mr. Blackburn getting his call-up papers. I don't think he'll have to go. If he does, it'll be an office job or the RAMC, Royal Army Medical Corps. And Bella's husband in khaki. I expect she will think of me now. It doesn't matter if she doesn't. I am pleased to hear that Ernie is getting all right with his work. I hope he will never get in the same mess as I am. Yes, I would like to see the letter that you're on about. If of anything like that happens, let me know. Take notice of the letter or word I put in brackets and keep them until I let you know. Well, I haven't much more news at present. I'm still in the best of health and usually, as usual, hoping you were the same. Best respects. I remain your ever-loving son, Percy. And he says some words in brackets. On the brackets, I am, close brackets. And same as before, Jessie and Ethel, kisses. Now, that's the last letter I have. But Percy refers to divisional rest. Quite short, this. Regimental history. The battalion was kept in reserve for a day or two and a march to Balliol, where a train was ready to take them to Hazebrouck, back in France. Incidentally, the area they fight in on is only just inside the border with Belgium, it's only just over. On arrival, they marched to Stapley, a village that has been largely unaffected by war. Here they were to train, clean up, reorganize, and go voluntarily to church. The village has such an effect on them that even the war diary comments. And before I read that, Pam and I, some years ago, we went to Stapley. It's a tiny, tiny village. It really is. It's not far from... I can't think of the name. It's not Sanomere. It's a tiny, tiny village. And I found it quite sad there. There is a church in the middle of the village. And in that church, tiny little cemetery of the locals. And there is one war grave cemetery in that church. And I seem to recall, it was a Maori soldier. Far from home, I suspect. But he was on his own there. So the war diary. This was the first opportunity the battalion had had for some months of living for a short time in a comparatively civilized area. And the change was very welcome. This was a very memorable 10-day rest, and the troops packed a lot into their time there. The sergeants established a very comfortable battalion mess. Headquarters beat A Company by 5-0. The Battalion 11 lost to a team of giants from the motor transport. Army Service Corps. The Rugger 15 played two very close games with the 11th Battalion losing both of them. We visited a quaint hilltop town of Cassel. That's the place. Stapley is near Cassel, Mont Cassel. French classes were started. The Nissen Huts give several open-air shows, and most of us went over to Hondegem to see the tonics in their new black and white costumes. No mention is made of replacements apart from the arrival of 8 new officers. Percy would have gone there. He went to this village of Stapley. And as I say, it's a tiny, tiny little village. I have no more letters from him. Regimental, I'll go through this in a little bit of time. I appreciate the time is going on, but I will just go through this. Regimental history states between the 20 and 22nd, the battalion was in divisional reserve, but was not needed. The last night of rest, the 22nd, was remembered by Private Clappison because it was his birthday and he had a glorious night and all but drunk. Majority of the HQ were the same as well. I'm going to jump a little bit now. I'm going up to the 27th of September 1918. D and HQ companies spent the night in an intricate system of tunnels in the chalk hillside near Hyde Park Corner. Hyde Park Corner is dead opposite Plug Street Wood. The tunnels are now filled in, but they are still there. And there are signs, like touristy signs for them. It says here that those tunnels had been excavated by the Germans. It's known. The tunnels were known as the catacombs, and it's believed they were dug by Australians and New Zealand troops. The other 3 companies waited in their assembly positions previously reconnoitred by Captain Hall. 28th September. No, at this point, they'd slept out all night and it was raining. All night and into the day. At 3 p.m, the battalion advanced. Under the cover of a creeping barrage and with a view to working on the northeast edge of Plug Street Wood, they were then to turn right and work southwards through the wood, finally taking up a position outside the southeast edge of the wood. Owing to the very heavy barrage and the enemy put up, and as soon as ours opened up, and also due to the very heavy machine gun fire from the woods, the 2 right-hand companies of the battalion were unable to advance beyond the road running from Hyde Park in a northeasterly direction. It's a giant field, that's what's there now. The left company was able to push forward. Blah, blah, blah. In the first few minutes of the attack, all 3 company commanders became casualties, and the battalion lost heavily, being reduced from 25 officers and 520 men to 14 officers and 384. That's 25 to 14 and 520 down to 384. 29th of September, the day Percy was killed. It was noticed on the morning of the 29th, whereas on the 28th, machine gun and sniper fire had been very heavy from the woods, but there was little of that now. Patrols pushed on through the wood, followed by companies, until they eventually reached a line running along Border Avenue and then in a northeasterly direction to the east of Legia. Legia is now a warden's post for the wood. Plug Street Wood now is sanctuary for animals. The 2 right companies reached their objectives without trouble, but the left company met considerable artillery and machine gun fire, were unable to advance beyond the grid line, and they give map references. D company went forward, but forced to retire to the starting point, Desperia Farm. That night, the 10th Battalion were taken out of the line and were relieved by the 11th Battalion, East Yorkshires. So to summarise, the 10th Battalion attacked with a strength of 25 officers plus other ranks. On leaving the line, they were down to 12 officers and 394 men. Of the 8 new officers who had joined on the 20th September, 20th and this is the 29th, 2 were dead and 3 were wounded. A total casualty breakdown shows 36 soldiers killed or died of their wounds. A further 88 were wounded. And then they list here, and they got one here. It says, Second Lieutenant Barnum missing. Second Lieutenant Barnum is buried about half a dozen headstones along from Percy. So God knows. Again, what was the process is like for recording details and information? Somebody with a pen and a pencil, I suspect. 10th Battalion was part of 92 Brigade. And for September 1918, there were 168 deaths, 720 wounded, and 139 missing. Missing, at that point, was a euphemistic way of saying they were either prisoners, or been blown to bits. That's what relates to. That really covers the story of Percy Dowten. He died on the 29th. I've got a lot more, but I'm not going to go through that because I'm conscious of the time. So I'll draw to a close now, but I will finish off with one thing. Oh, in the photos here, you're welcome to come and see them. Here, that's Percy Dowten. There are his medals. That's euphemistically known as his death penny. That's what was issued to families of troops who lost their lives. No pension was given with that. That was it. That is an authentic First World War East Yorkshire badge. As Percy, it's not his badge, but it is an authentic one. These are some photos here of Percy's grave. I'll skip that one for a moment. Now, this is a sheer coincidence. In 2018, myself, Pam, and other members of my family, we travelled to be in Underhill Farm. That's where he's buried. Underhill Farm, to be there for his 100th anniversary. Pam, myself, cousins. We pulled up, and there was another family there at the same grave. And it turns out they are the grandchildren, or some of the grandchildren, of Ernie Dowten, who one of the ladies we've got to know, one of the ladies has also got a huge interest in family history, and in particular the First War. And she and her sister and two husbands decided they would travel up. We were there at 11 o'clock. Symbolic. We didn't know what time, but we thought 11 o'clock being a symbolic time. And as we pulled up, there were these four people at the grave. I said, there's there. And one of my cousins went over and said, well, who are you? What are you doing here? Oh, it's our uncle. It's my uncle, he said. And we had somewhere here, is it this one? There is, it's not a large photo, but that's everybody. Yes, Percy's grave there. Now that is a chance in a million. Oh, I am now in touch with this family. Let me just bend this back a bit. There we are. One of the sisters lives in Pontypool and the one lives down Warminster way somewhere. But that was, yes, a symbolic but happened chance moment. Now, I will finish now, but with one story. Oh, one thing. When Percy, the family, Charlie Dowten, the father, received the letter, it was actually my grandmother who took the letter from the postman, or opened it. That was never kept, so we don't know what happened to that. This photo was taken in 1928. Now, at the start of my talk, I talked about British Legion pilgrimage in 1928. That's the booklet that was issued to everybody who travelled on it. Charlie Dowten, his wife, Eliza Jane, and the youngest, Percy's youngest sister, Ethel, travelled on it. And I've made reference to Ethel many, many times in here. He obviously thought a lot about her. That photo was taken on the 7th of August, 1928. 1928. The next day, August the 8th, 1928, huge parade in Ypres, marched through the Menin Gate. And the person who took the salute at that point was the Duke of Windsor, who eventually became King George the 8th, 6th, 7th, 6th. I work it out between you. But he took, I think, my grandfather went with the family. Only a second. Percy had a huge amount of time for his two sisters, my gran and Ethel. Ethel died in a mental hospital in 1991, I think it was. Very, very sad life. And I do wonder if Percy, realised there was problems way back in 1918 with his sister. And there we are. I'll stop at that point now. Lots of information, but I'm conscious of the time slipping away at this point. The talk, I'm not pushing myself here, Jeff. That and the pilgrimage of 1928 is worth a talk in itself. But we'll leave it at that. Thank you. If there are any questions, nothing hard.
Yes, nothing hard. Plenty welcome.
Thank you.
How old was Percy when he actually died?
19, yes. And I have details here going back to 1921, I think it is, showing the layout of the cemetery. The cemetery is a tucked away little place. Pam has been there, my friend Steve has been there as well. Tucked away little place, and it sees that he is actually alongside, even today, Richards and Apollon still there, side by side. And that was taken, as I say, that was 1928, wooden crosses. Now, of course, you've got the typical white headstone that you see with the Commonwealth War graves.
Any other questions? Please.
Yes, you mentioned censorship of the soldiers' letters from the trenches. How extensive was the censorship, and how much effort actually had to be put in to make it effective?
I think, from what I understand, Pete, it was left up to the officers of the battalion that they were. And you've got a good point. You could have an officer who was dedicated to striking this and this out. You've got others who might say, here they go through. The answer to your question, I don't know. It was a huge postal service arrangements that were made for covering the Western Front and covering other parts of the world. But certainly it was a massive operation, postal operation. But as regards to censorship, I sometimes feel that it was up to the officers concerned. That's my best guess.
Thank you.
You said at one stage they had to buy their food. I thought food was supplied to them.
He asked for money, yeah. Food was supplied, but food, even if you see in modern reproductions of the films, food could be brought up in pannikins, the large things, a soup, a stew of some sort. Goodness, it was probably cold when it got there. Lots of soldiers would like to keep some bacon in their pack because at least they could fry it, if nothing else, a little burner. They fry it. They were desperately short towards the end of the war. The German troops at that point instead, were also suffering. They were going through a bad period. August the 8th, 1918, was the Black Day of the German army, and from that point, they never advanced. They were continually retiring, right up until November the 11th. But certainly, that's a point. For the 1928 pilgrimage, the parade day August the 8th was made because that was the Black Day of the German army. So it's like rubbing salt into a wound at that point, that even though the families were in Ypres, they could see the Duke of Windsor. They chose the day to say, right, that's the day you lost the war, basically, even though it extended back to November the 11th.
It's interesting saying about the food. I've got my grandfather's diary, and he'd fought in Gallipoli, and they went up through the Balkans, and he described Christmas Day. I'm not sure it was 1916 or something, and he just said bully for Christmas dinner.
Yeah. They also had something called tins of McConaughey's, which was a meal in a can, and it should contain everything. But in reality, it might be a gristly bit of meat with perhaps veg and some sort of gravy. They were there. Tickler's jam was another one. Always suspect. That was another one given the troops. But if you read anything about the First War and just read as to what the troops were supplied with behind the lines, it was fine. That's what they cooked. Don't forget, if you were in the front lines, there was nobody cooking there. It wasn't a cookhouse just behind you. Food was being brought forward. It could well have been cold a lot of the time.
I watched the history program. They were saying when the troops were away from the front line, a lot of them actually ate better than they did back at home.
Yeah.
Because they came from relatively poor backgrounds, and they were fed better when they were behind the lines than they would have been at home.
It's very true. One small point here, only a second, Jeff. I don't know if people know, the troops' size of the feet of the troops grew than prior to the First War. And they put it down to exceptionally heavy loads that they were carrying and increased the width and length of the feet. Small fact.
Be in the shoe business. An object lesson for you, if this has stimulated your interest in visiting any World War I battlefields, let me tell you a short story. We went to visit some years ago with some friends, and outside one of the graveyards, a chap was selling stuff that he'd dug up, because there's stuff still turning up, as you say, constantly, bits of shells, bits of everything. And this friend of ours bought this lovely piece of brass, cone-shaped, only about that tall and about that sort of diameter, beautifully polished. This was going to be a memorial to the visit sort of thing. Well, we get to the Eurostar terminal in Brussels, and the luggage has to go through the X-ray machines. And this suitcase gets through the X-ray machine, an alarm goes off, and in minutes they clear the room, and anyone who's not got through the X-ray machine is sent out onto the concourse of the station, and the people who've gone through it, including my wife and I, were sent onto the platform. Get away from here. The case was empty, this piece was found, and this friend of ours and his wife were taken off by the police to the local police station. They were then taken to the main police station in Brussels. Then they were hauled up in front of a magistrate, and the magistrate gave them a real talking to. But in the meantime, they'd closed the station, and trains weren't allowed to stop. So Eurostar was just flying through the station, and more and more people accumulating. The trains weren't stopping. We eventually got home about 12 hours later, I think. And so ever since then, he's been referred to as Bomber Barry. But to avoid embarrassment, I shan't tell you his surname. Anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just ask one question about training? At one moment we are hearing so much about Percy's letters in England. The next thing, he was in Europe, and they were very young, the soldiers, sort of 19 years age. Were they given, as far as you know, any intensive training, or did they simply not have time?
I think training in those days was very, very basic. And especially, don't forget, we'd had the war at the end coming towards the end of the war. And as he said, they were, in one case, they were recruiting people over the 40s, into the 40s, just to get out there because they needed the manpower. And that's because of the German offensive. Training would have been fitness, obviously rifle skills, probably bayonet skills, fitness being the majority of it, I suppose, and the ability to follow orders.
Essential.
Essential.
Well, thank you very much indeed for a very interesting afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.